Genshin Impact records lowest revenue in the month of May since launch. Well, yeah, but they made bank on Honkai Star Rail, so all is good. Hoyo is the true winner here. My face when the lowest revenue since launch is still $34 million on Sensor Tower alone, which still puts it only below Star Rail, also a Hoyo game on their honeymoon, and the full amount doesn't even include PC, China, PS, website revenue, because that's not trackable. As is no doubt evident, Genshin Impact recorded its lowest revenue for a single month since its release. And even at its lowest point, it is still the #2 highest grossing gacha game in the world. This is totaling mobile, this is totaling PC, this is totaling PlayStation across global and China. Now, this article and multiple articles like this are circulating online, and players of other communities are taking this as an opportunity to take shots at Genshin Impact declining. I actually got tagged over on Twitter, I think about 2 days ago, roughly, since these statistics were made available over the course of the last 4 or 5 days. This tweet in specific called me out for being a Hoyo shill, saying, how does it feel now that the game that I have been shilling for, I don't know, the last year or so of the channel existing is finally in a state of decline? I was gonna go ahead and reply to him on Twitter, but I clicked his profile first and I saw there were a bunch of retweets of Tower Fantasy content. And it's no secret that Tower Fantasy players generally hate Genshin Impact. Tower Fantasy was considered by many people to be a Genshin Impact killer prior to it launching, but here's a look at Tower Fantasy Global right now. This is disregarding the, I think, 400,000 in China, compared to Genshin Impact right now, just still sitting at over 34 million across Android and iOS. Before we go any further, I just want to take a moment here to thank all of our incredible patrons. You guys allow me to continue to play games like this for a living, and I can never truly repay that kindness. Also, if you're interested, I stream over on Twitch every single weekend. You should totally come on over and join me. Now, this article goes on to state, Genshin Impact Hoyoverse's juggernaut title has recorded the lowest revenue in the month of May ever since the game's launch back in 2020. According to the data from AppMagic and Sensor Tower both pull different data from different sources, so they're going to come up with different numbers. But according to AppMagic, the revenue in the month of May is recorded to be at $53 million. Admittedly, that's quite the substantial discrepancy, as one lists 53 million, the other lists 34 million. That's a discrepancy of almost $19 million, or perhaps even more than $19 million, which by all means is still a hefty amount as compared to other gacha game titles. The month of May even beats the now second lowest month of revenue of the game's lifespan, which was back in June 2021. The dip in revenue can be attributed to various aspects, from the poor selling of the Baizu debut banner. Yeah, I know a lot of people skipped that. And there's also a lull in terms of content right now. Everyone is or was saving up for the Fontaine region for the new characters coming out. The Baizu banner only made $1.9 million in the Chinese iOS market. To put things into perspective, the previous banner, Nahida and Nalo, made over $8 million according to Sportskeeda. That is quite the large gap. The other obvious reason being the successful launch of Honkai Star Rail. And that is true. There is no denying a substantial number of Genshin Impact players moved to Honkai Star Rail, even if only temporary. And due to there being nothing to actually spend their money on necessarily right now in Genshin Impact, they've opted to spend it in Honkai. And that makes sense. There's a lot to actually obtain right now in Star Rail comparatively to Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact is in this really large lull state right now, and I think, if I'm being completely honest here, I genuinely think that Hoyo decided to release Honkai Star Rail now because they knew that there would be a very large lull period between patch cycles in Genshin Impact. Thus, they could maximize earnings for the company as a whole by releasing Star Rail when Genshin was potentially going to be at its weakest. And Star Rail on mobile alone made over $250 million, combining global and China. If you factor in PC sales, it could have potentially made $500 million. Star Rail has allowed for Hoyo to actually have its highest grossing month in recorded history. And sure, it is also cannibalizing Genshin Impact to an extent, but I'm sure this is only going to be temporary, as Honkai Star Rail is also going to enter a lull period, and that's when players will go back to Genshin Impact, spend in Genshin, and this will continue to be the general cycle of things. One game will have a large patch, will bring new players, bring old players back, and Hoyo will continue to scale their overall earnings higher and higher. They'll release Zenless Zone Zero, that's going to probably open to more than Honkai Star Rail did. Given these factors, it's not surprising to see a dip in revenue in the game, but ultimately Genshin Impact is still considered to be one of the largest gacha games right now, and a small hole in its revenue isn't detrimental in the grand scheme of things. Very true. Now, admittedly, there have been some people that... I can't believe Genshin is dying. Only Hoyo themselves can release the Genshin killer. I mean, everyone knows that meme that has been going around for at least a year or two now. The only thing that can kill Genshin Impact is Hoyo themselves. And at least for right now, Honkai Star Rail is definitely cannibalizing Genshin Impact, its player base, its earnings. I do think this will only be temporary. I am certain Genshin Impact will continue to see a very substantial increase over the course of the next month or two, but the small dip in revenue isn't enough to impact the game's success, the game's future or potential future updates. The cumulative total of both Genshin and Star Rail have achieved more for Hoyo than Genshin could have ever done alone. Now, if neither Genshin nor Honkai Star Rail are games that ultimately interest you, absolutely no problem. I got you covered with 2 different videos on screen right now.